Great morning, business owners and managers, and welcome to another awesome episode of CX in the Morning, Customer Experience in the Morning. I am your host, Mr. Wes Walters, and on every single CX in the Morning, I bless you with customer service tips, customer experience tricks, and I leave you with gems. And if you've been watching long enough, you know by when I say gems, I mean actionable takeaways that you can implement at the speed of now. Immediately after this broadcast, you'll be able to take what you've learned, sharing it with your team and your business, making your team and your business better. And that by itself, my friend, is pretty awesome. That's why this is awesome TV. First of all, how was everyone's weekend? All of you guys who drove in to Atlanta for All-Star Weekend, the weekend is over. You can leave. Wait, isn't there supposed to be like a global lockdown for social events? Like, did you guys not get the memo? Like, there is a global pandemic. That does not apply to Atlanta. Mask, hashtag mask what mask? It's just like 1997. Like, hey, All-Star Weekend is just like, hey, what COVID? What are you talking about? I saw a video of leave, please. Paul is saying leave, please. Paul, can you tell him please to leave Atlanta? Like, we're full. No more, hey, I came in 2021 and I never left. No, we are full. Okay. So I saw video footage on Instagram of Lennox Small. It was a hashtag. So funny. He says, Lennox Mall is filled with shoppers, but nobody got bags in their head. so it was just walking around, just doing what we do. Hey, anyway, I had a great weekend. How was your weekend? If your business was open on the weekend, how was your weekend? How was you know what I mean? Not how did it feel? I'm talking about metrics. Did you make money? Paul, how was the weekend? Was it profitable? How was the weekend? Because I think you're open on Saturdays. How was the weekend, Paul? Was how not how you felt. What does the metrics say that you did on Saturday or Sunday too? Great. Excellent. Anyway, so today is, if you're not aware, that this is March is Women's History Month. Yeah, Women's History Month. So if you're black and woman, you get a doozy. You get the double dip. You get all of February, and then you double back in March. So all the black women are celebrating. First quarter is Black Women's Quarter. They get January coming off of Christmas and all the goodies from Kwanzaa. Then they get Black History Month, and then they get Women's History Month. So you can just celebrate for 60 days if you're a black woman. You see? Won't he do it? Won't he do it? But anyway, today in March is Women's History Month, and today it's Women's History Day. Today is special. Today is what does the calendar say? Today is Women's Day, and you can't. Google reminds you with the little movie that they show when you Google. Today is Women's Day, not Women's History Day. Today is Women's Day. So if you're a woman and you didn't know, now you know. Today is Women's Day. Miss Bernadette, did you know? I know she didn't know because I just learned it. Today is Women's Day, and to help me with this glorious discussion is someone who is empowering our girls, because they don't wake up tomorrow and women. No, it starts in the cradle. They're girls first. Oh, Miss Bernadette says yes, she knew it was Women's Day. See, there's a lot of men that didn't know today was Women's Day. But someone to help us with the girls, because it starts, you can't wake up, and there's a quote, and I'm summarizing by Douglas. He says, it's easier to fix broken boys, or it's easier to raise sharp boys, and I'm summarizing, than to rectify broken men. Same thing in men, in the word men here, we're going to use it the way the Bible uses it, in regards to fixing people. So it's easier to raise and produce awesome young girls than trying to rectify and fix broken women. If I got $1 for how many broken sisters and women, period, that I met in college, whether it's my dad wasn't there, I was touched inappropriately, I don't have high self-esteem, the list goes on and on. of how many sisters and they're dealing with trauma as adults. But if we rectify it, if you nip it in the bud, like we say here in the South, while they're girls, they can more likely grow into being productive members of society. And to help us with this glorious topic is no other than Miss Tierica Berry. Miss Tierica Berry is the owner and founder of a Woman's Standard. Miss Tierica, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you, Wes?
And I'm doing great. Great. How was your All-Star weekend?
There's too many people here. Too many people here.
Like, they're not leaving. I saw footage of the interstate. I mean, like, Grady Curb is like grand packed like it's a parking lot.
It's ridiculous. And I saw a video of a club, and it was packed, wall to wall, front to back, everybody like this. No mask.
No mask. No mask. So, hey, look. Hey, if the party is worth it, it's not. Let's get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. Wes at 18 wouldn't care about no COVID. Like, COVID, alcohol kills COVID. Just put some of the alcohol, moist the trachea, and it literally stops the virus before it enters the body. The alcohol level in your throat has to be above this, and it kills the virus.
Good luck with that.
So tell me a little bit about your organization, what you do, how you do it, and why the viewers should even listen.
So my organization is a Woman's Standard, and basically what we do is we help young women overcome barriers to academic, behavioral, and emotional success. And so a lot of these barriers are psychological. Some of them are physical barriers, self-esteem, or it could be just access to information and knowledge. But our sole goal within the organization is how do we take everything that could possibly hinder a young woman from being a girl from evolving into a successful woman, and remove those barriers so that she can, achieve those things she wants to accomplish.
What are some of the most common barriers? Is it socioeconomic hindrance, or what are some of the biggest or most common barriers that you see?
I mean, strangely enough, a lot of the barriers are with the girls that I work with are the same across the board, pretty much.
When you say across the board, you mean race or age?
Both.
Okay.
Both. And so they're dealing with socioeconomic issues, challenges, if I should say. A lot of them have been raped or molested. You would be surprised how many young women have been molested or raped or touched inappropriately. And I want to say it's like 1 in 7 or 1 in 3 or something like that. It's something like that. But having that as something that we're constantly fighting against, and people are thinking that this, there's some stranger that's going to come with a hood over his head and sneak into the house. But honestly, these situations are situations that are happening with family members, you know. Most commonly it's someone who's in the house or someone who knows the child personally. Mm-hmm. But even more importantly than all of those, I would say exposure.
Exposure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exposure is the most. It's really the differentiating factor on the success or the failure of actually men and women. Mm-hmm. Because if you take 2 children that grow up in the same household, and one succeeds and one is, doesn't succeed, and I'm air quoting that, right? And you look at what's the difference. We have the same parents, we grew up in the same household, we had similar experiences, and then when you dig a little bit deeper, you say, oh wow, this one who succeeded actually participated in a summer program that took them traveling or taught them life skills or took them out of the country, or, and they were exposed to something different. They were exposed to a different way of thinking, of being. And that exposure is just so important. Even if you experience rape or molestation or socioeconomic hardships and difficulties, if you're exposed to how you can do something different, then that'll make the difference.
Yeah, while you were talking about exposure, what came to mind, I saw I have it saved in my Instagram. It's a clip of Steve Harvey, whether you like him or not, I'm not a Steve Harvey ambassador, but, ever so often the brother drops some gems and I take the gems when I need it. He says, and again, I'm summarizing, he talked about exposure. And he was like, a lot of us don't have it, not because we're not good, not because we're incompetent, not because we're inept. It's just that never thought that, hey, you can ice skate. Basketball is not the only thing. Like, there's a brother who killed it in the last Olympics, a brother on ice. Like, so a lot of it is just like showing that, hey, basketball is great. Yes. Football is great, but you can get a full scholarship playing volleyball. Yes. Like volleyball. Yes, volleyball. Like, you're tall. Basketball team is filled. Here's a full ride.
Yep.
Just simply by exposure. Yep. And that's the differentiator is being exposed, not knowing that, hey, there is another option. Basketball, like we like my guy Marquell Russell was saying over the weekend. He says, whenever you're in a neighborhood and you find that star talent who everybody in the neighborhood know that's the dude, like he's going pro. All of the other knuckleheads might be allowed to smoke weed. All the other knuckleheads might be allowed to act up in class. But that one dude, the neighborhood protects him. No.
Mm-hmm.
No. You're our way out. No. You can't drink. You can't smoke. Like once they find that one-star athlete, to elevate him. What if we did that to that one-star entrepreneur that we saw? Like, oh, yeah, you're going to be an entrepreneur. You're going to be a billionaire. Like, let's protect. Nah, you don't have to have a ball to run it. Like, we see greatness in you, and we're going to protect you just like we protect the jock.
What if we could build a tribe like that around each young person?
Wow.
If we could say, hey, let me take these 3 people and wrap it around this person because this is what this person needs. Let me pair this person with this mentor because they have access to things that this young person likes. What if we took the same concept and just duplicated it?
Yes. So tell me, how has I'm aware of your program because I've actually worked with a partner organization that's similar to what you do. So I have an idea of what you do. Now, how has COVID affected what you're doing?
So initially when things began shutting down this time last year, a lot of people were kind of scrambling because they didn't know what the next few months, let alone the next year, was going to look like. And so some of the contracts that we had, they said, hey, let's hold off on this and revisit it later, or let's cancel this, or, a lot of what I do is I travel and do sessions in person. So, well, now we can't bring any outside vendors, so we can't bring you in to facilitate this contract that we had. Mm-hmm. So initially it hit pretty hard, but as it began to develop, and I knew this was going to happen. Mm-hmm. As it began to develop, or time passed, and these children are in their homes. These children are not getting outside. They're not socializing. Mm-hmm. Now, like even before the pandemic, they needed social and emotional learning and development. But now in the pandemic, in quarantine, in a lot of times the trauma that they're experiencing is coming from the household, right? Mm-hmm. So now they're in that 24/7. Now, how do they deal with that?
Wow.
So we've been doing a lot of virtual workshops, trainings, meetup groups, support groups. I've even been doing some very individualized coaching with one of my clients, going through each of the girls on our roster and calling them and saying, hey, what do you need? How are things going? What's happened since the last time we talked? And doing a check-in like that. And that was pretty much because a lot of the girls were, experiencing what they call Zoom fatigue.
Yeah. So they never have TikTok fatigue or Snapchat fatigue, but ironically, somebody thought about, how can we justify not wanting to be on the Zoom? I know, Zoom fatigue.
That was, oh my gosh, Wes, that's why you're my brother, because that's the same exact thing I said. I had a client said, well, we're not going to bring you in because the girls already have Zoom fatigue.
Really? You mean the same girls who are like this for 23 hours?
I said, and my exact words were, they don't have Instagram fatigue. or TikTok fatigue, right? And I told them, I said, if you want to, and they talked about using a different platform like Google Classrooms or something. I said, that's not the issue. The issue is the content that you're delivering. Because if you want me to sit for an hour or 30 minutes or whatever and listen to someone talk at me or give me a lesson or something like that, then yeah, it's not Zoom fatigue, it's information fatigue and overload, you know? And so for my sessions, what I do is I make it interactive and engaging, and we play games and, you know, a lot of different things. We talk about music and the things that are interesting to them. I kind of let them lead the direction that we're going. And sometimes in the middle of a session, we may have to just stop and talk about, you know, whatever. I remember one session, one girl, toward the end of the session, I allowed them to kind of guide it. She said, well, I don't know. I said, hey, this is a space where we're talking about what's interesting to you, what you need help with. And she said, well, this guy slid in my DMs and and we began talking about, we had a whole probably about 20-minute conversation about these guys sliding in our DMs, you know, but that's why they enjoy my sessions, because we're not just sitting there talking at the kids. We're really giving them what they need. It's not about Zoom. It's not about Google Classrooms. It's about the content and you meeting the needs of the client.
Nice. Now, if you're just tuning in, we're here with Miss Tierica Berry. She is the owner and founder of A Woman's Standards. Now, Tierica, you mentioned, I don't want to assume all individuals watching know what social emotional learning is. So tell us a little bit about what social emotional learning is.
So social emotional learning is really how it's. So let me step back. So when you think about emotional intelligence versus, so when you talk about IQ, intelligence quotient, everyone always hears about your intelligence quotient, right? Your IQ. What's your IQ? How smart are you? And that's because everybody goes really hard in society and in education, focusing on the academics, right? At the expense of your emotional quotient or your EQ, which is how you deal with emotions, how you process emotions, how you interact with other people, how you interact with yourself, right? And so with social and emotional learning, what we do is social emotional learning is teaching people how to interact with themselves and other people, how to be socially aware and recognize challenges that they're dealing with, and how to express themselves more authentically.
So is this connected or related to emotional intelligence?
Definitely.
Got
it.
EQ,
when you go EQ, emotional intelligence, all that's in the same wheelhouse.
Now, are there, I guess, I want to say red flags. Red flags has a negative connotations. Are there things that you can see on the surface of a girl who has dealt with some trauma that no one knows about, whether it's inappropriate touching, whether it's the myriad of other traumas that you mentioned earlier? What should men, caretakers, uncles, aunts, what should they be looking for?
So a lot of it is, it's not a one size fits all type of situation, and it's not something that you can just look at a girl and be like, all right, yeah, you've been touched, But it's more relationship. It's more relational. And so as I began developing relationships with young people and asking them questions and learning why they think certain things, why they believe certain things, then I can kind of make some assessments based on that. Also, drastic changes in behavior. So if maybe they are typically really withdrawn and now they're really, expressive and flamboyant, or even the opposite way around, they're really out and dramatic and now they're really sullen and quiet, then it might be an indication that something's going on. Also, just kind of watching their proximity. And that's why I say, again, it's hard to tell, because it could be either end of the spectrum. When you have an experience like that, it can send you to either end of the spectrum. So like as a man, Wes, if I'm a young lady and I've been molested or raped or touched, and you walk into the room, my response could either be to be all up on you and I'm so sexually charged up that I'm like in your space.
To the perpetrator or to men in general?
Men in general.
Okay. So even the perpetrator?
It could be. It could be. or I could be withdrawn and completely like, oh my God, like you touch me and I go tense and everything. So it's a lot of different ways that it could manifest in the people who in these victims, basically, or survivors, I should say.
Yeah, I mean that's why I'm a proponent for counseling and therapy. A lot of times in our society, in our community, it has a negative connotation, but like we're all dealing with something, man. We're all dealing with something, and therapy help. Like that's an automatic debit. Like therapy comes out automatically.
Yeah.
Like I ain't use you this month, but I know something's gonna come up in the next 30 days. Just take it out anyway, so I can set something up. Like it's like a cell phone bill. It's an auto pay. Therapist, it comes out.
Yes,
Like,
it's so important in shifting the perspective about therapy, and the stigma about going to see a therapist and a counselor is so important. I have a product called Unpacking the Emotional Suitcase. And that book really helps young women to process and cope with emotional trauma. And so that tool, that resource, is an activity guide. So there are activities, there are stories and things that take you through that whole process of, like you just asked me a critical question that is where you start. How do we know that there's a problem? Right? And from there, we trace it all the way back to getting down to the root of what the problem is, because if we just bury it, and that was my story, when I was 14, I was raped, and I tucked it away. I didn't tell anyone. I tucked it away, and just kind of, hey, that's back there. It's not bothering me. But it manifested in promiscuity. It manifested as insecurities, as hypersexuality, all of these different things. And when I had a situation happen to someone very close to me, I broke down crying, fell down in the middle of the floor crying, but I wasn't thinking about her situation. I was thinking about my situation. And I said, how can I go after this man who is assaulting my loved one when I haven't even addressed my own stuff? And that's when I realized that I needed to do some more work. And it's just situations like this that led me to write Unpacking the Emotional Suitcase, figuring out how do I process this emotional trauma so that I own my story and my story no longer owns me.
Man, well, salute to you. I've known you all these years and I even knew that, man. So
No.
I never knew that, T. Man, so, what do you say? What do you say when someone said, do you say, I'm sorry? What's the normal response without pitying them or without being overprotective? Like what, this is a learning experience for me and for others who are watching. When someone shares something like that with you, what should be your response?
I mean, it could be, again, it's no one, me, I'm not a one size fits all type person. And,
what would you like me to say? I'm sorry that you experienced that. Or
now for me, I've processed it. This story no longer owns me. I use it to empower others and to educate others. But for someone who is still in the thick of it, just saying, hey, I'm sorry to hear that. Not sorry for you. I'm sorry to hear that. Is there any way that I can support you? That's the biggest thing. How can you support? And because sometimes they may not want to talk about it, to you, but hey, how can I support you? And encouraging, just depending on the relationship that you have, encouraging therapy, encouraging, them to dig deeper into that to make sure that there's no residual trauma, stemming from that. And of course, get them a copy of Unpacking the Emotional Suitcase.
Absolutely. It's not so much even the girls, man. I have a friend who is a therapist in the military. And she's like, Wes, if I tell you, I'm not over exaggerating, once a week, there's a new case of sexual assault in the military. She said, and she's like, they come in and they want to talk, but they don't want to press charges because it has happened 4 or 5 years ago. And so they just want to talk because now time has passed and they're like, I want to share it every week, at least one. And she's like, the psychology of the women who've been taken advantage, who's been sexually assaulted, is that when she finds out, when she pulls back the layers and say, like, why 4 years later? Why 3 years later? The consensus is, if I had told, one, it would have been hard trying to make people believe me as a private, where here is a battalion commander with all his years and respect. Who are they going to believe? Me or him? One, and the chances of rising in command with an accusation like that against someone else, it literally puts a scar on your career. Even, again, here it is. She's a victim. I want to be very clear. She was raped. But coming out and saying I was raped puts a scar and tarnishes her career. Let me say that again, because a lot of people then are like, what do you know? Jane was raped. Jane saying, hey, I was raped. Oh, your career is over.
Yep.
So they keep it to themselves, because some of them have this vision of, I want to rise in command and I don't want this. They feel that they can shower it away. They can bathe it away. And all right, yes, 5-6 years later, they've climbed in command and they realize that they still have the skeleton that's growing and being like, acknowledge me, it's not going to go away.
Yep. And it's so pervasive. You saw when you said therapist in the military, I was like, ooh, because I already know. And so a lot of that's when I talk about this information is like useful for people of all ages, it's because what you just said is similar to what these young women are experiencing too. You know, so when you ask a lot of young women why they didn't tell, or even me, let's take my story. Why I didn't tell. One, I felt like I wanted to protect him. I didn't want him to get beat up or go to jail or, things like that. And, his thing was, all right, we're going to take this to the grave. And that's what he told me, take it to the grave. Right. I felt guilty. I had my own guilt associated because I felt like I walked myself into the situation, even though I was 14, but I felt like I walked myself into the situation, and I wasn't able to really address that guilt and shame in a healthy way until well into my 20s. Yeah. Shoot, maybe 25 or 26 or something like that. Right. I had another situation where one of my teachers actually stuck his tongue in my ear in middle school. What? And yes, in middle school. And I like froze, and he left from where we were. And I like ran back to class, right? And I didn't tell anybody because he was like the school dad and everybody loved him. And I never confronted it. Even just recently really began to really talk about it, but these are the things that we hold on to and say, oh, it's okay, I'm gonna just hold this for myself, and just tuck it away because I don't want someone else to get hurt. I don't want to raise flags. I think people are not going to believe me, or, just so many different ways we, try to use logic to protect these predators. Yeah, and of course, the mind of the thinking capacity of a mind of a 14-year-old. As you were speaking, I have a childhood friend of mine, and she wasn't molested, but her dad friend attempted to molest her. So the dad friend came to the house when the dad wasn't there, realized, dad wasn't there. And, this is the dad's friend. So almost like an uncle. And, she's in the clothes that I guess a nightie that she slept in. And, he said some inappropriate things and attempted to touch her. And she was like, she closed the door and she didn't tell her dad. And I was like, why didn't you tell your dad? And again, here it is. She wasn't technically molested, but he tried to touch her and he said some inappropriate things. And she was like, because I love my dad. And I don't know if I had told my dad would have killed him, not verbally, but my dad would have went to prison. So I didn't want to lose my dad. So she kept that in, and she was like, yo, Wes, every time I would go back home and I would see him, I would want to kill him. And, like, I'm so protective of my daughter. And I'm like, man, like the stuff that women go through that, like, I'm not saying boys don't go through it too, but like
It's a lot. It's a lot, like stuff that, and I try to cultivate a relationship with my daughter, and I'm like, I hope that she's always knows that she would tell me anything. But I put my daughter in that position. If that happened to her, she probably would do the same thing. She probably wouldn't tell me because she's like, my dad would kill him. Like they know some of the things that I'm willing to go to jail for certain things. Then like, hey, I'll probably,
I see your gears turning west.
Just the thought, So tell us a little bit about the book project that you have with the girls, because I'm sure this is part of the transition or moving in the direction of healing, using your words to heal. Tell us a little bit about the book. How does it work? Do they, at the end of the product, are they considered published authors? How does that work?
So the anthology project is the program that you're referring to, where we actually work with students to write and publish their own book. And so what will happen is the client will bring us in, so let's say a school or a program or a church or whoever, they'll bring us in, we'll come up with like kind of a general theme. And so the theme might be, let's write about school, or let's write about emotions, or let's write about the pandemic, right? As long as it's in that general theme, I allow the students to take the lead on the rest of it. And so they decide, okay, who's our audience? What is the what are the chapters that we're going to put in the book? So we come up with the outline, the title, the subtitle, the description on the back of the book, and then they write to these different themes. And so I'll create writing prompts for each section, and they're able to express themselves in whatever way they feel comfortable. So poetry, they can write fiction, nonfiction, they can write short stories, lyrics, they can write, one young lady wrote acronyms for hers. Another young lady did recipes because she really likes to cook. So she had like, we wrote about relationships, and she did something like love me brownies or something like that. And it was a recipe for brownies. And then at the end, it was like, and you eat your brownies and you let it go or something like that. But they get really creative with this project. And at the end of the program, we teach them how to we actually publish the book. So yes, they are published authors. And then we set up their little e-commerce site, and they compete to sell the book. So instead of selling cookies and donuts, and nothing against the chocolates and cookies and donuts, but they're actually selling their own published work. And what better way to validate student voice than for people to put money down to purchase your words, your work, something that you created. And so I can't tell you how many times girls have went through this program, and in the beginning I asked about writing. How many of you like writing? Not many will raise their hand. By the end of the program, I have so many girls that say, if I want to write my own book, can you help me with that?
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Nice. Now, you talked about your client. Now, who is your client? Is your client school districts? Is your client principal? Who is your ideal client? Is it a principal or the school districts?
So I've had clients that range from school districts, local level schools, like the high school or middle school. I've had churches. I've had a lot of different people. Really, anybody who has a group of young women would be an ideal client. But if I were to really hone into where we really see the biggest, shift is in juvenile justice and alternative education. And I think it's because these girls in this setting are slipping through the cracks because their numbers are so few. So if you go into an alternative setting or juvenile justice, a lot of times, especially if it's a co-ed situation, you may have, like 5% females, and so they're like, oh, well, we can't justify bringing in someone just for these 3 girls. Well, are these 3 girls not important?
Yeah.
So they're missing very important instruction, exposure, because of the environment that they're in. And so I remember once I went to an alternative site, and I was working with I was supposed to go in and work with the young women. When I got there, they said, hey, we only have about, 3 to 5 girls on campus right now. Is it possible that we could do a co-ed? Now, this was years ago, right? And so at the time I'm like, oh, I don't want to lose my contract. Yeah, you know, I gotta do it. So I'm like, yeah, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was in a session, and I had all the boys in the session in this one particular session, and no girls. And then one girl came in, and now as the girl's coming in, the boys are kind of rowdy, right? And so as the girl comes in, I'm excited because I'm like, hey, it's a girl. That's what I'm here for, right? So she comes in, and the boys just start ragging on her. Like, I'm talking about going in on her. So I'm like, hey, we're not doing that. Yeah. And so the guys are just going. So she finally gets up, flips them off, gives the teacher a few choice words, and storms out of the classroom. And I had an out-of-body experience at that point. Now, I'm going to tell you now, I went in on those boys. Yeah. I went in on them. Mm-hmm. And so, but after that, I had to really sit back and say, hey, Terica, you're going to miss your entire mark trying to catch everybody, you know, instead of going deep into working with that specific population that you want to work with. So now when people ask me if I'll do co-ed, 9 times out of 10, my answer is no.
Yeah, like anyone who watches the show, I always tell them, if you're serving everyone, you're not serving anyone. You have to know who your ideal client is in order to serve them at a world-class level. Yes, boys need help. That's why there's another program that I can refer them to. I serve girls at a world-class level. I serve girls at a world-class level. Great stuff. Again, if you're just tuning in, we're here with Terica Berry, the owner and founder of A Woman's Standard. Now, let me ask you this, T. A girl who grows into being an adult, who has unresolved trauma, is it too late if she's in her 30s? Can this be rectified?
It's never too late.
Okay.
It's never too late. I think we get in trouble when we begin to put time frames on things. I always say that healing is more about the process and less about the time. Mm-hmm. So if you're going through the process, you're actively engaging, you're seeking counseling and therapy, you are, you know, diving in and not shying away from the work, mm-hmm. then you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. If it takes you 6 months, if it takes you 6 years, if it takes you 60 years, whatever it is, whatever is you going through that process is what it takes. I've had women that were 60 years old come to me after my presentation and tell me something that they were raped when they were a girl, and they never told anyone until they told me. Wow. Tears in their eyes. And I would sit there and cry with them because, God, you have been carrying this for that long. And that's not, that is a very common situation. That's a very common occurrence that happens when I speak and I present to audiences at churches. I used to be a flight attendant. I was doing poetry on the back of the plane, shared a poem with a young woman. Well, this woman was 50 something years old. Mm-hmm. And after I did my poem, she had tears in her eyes and told me that when she was 13, her cousin molested her, and she had never told anybody until she had just told me. So from 13 to her 50s, she held that. She held that inside of her. So is it too late for her? No. As long as she takes this necessary steps. Now, at the time, I was a flight attendant, so I wasn't as aware of the whole process. I wasn't in a space where I could really guide her. But if I could go back to that same woman and sit in the back of the plane like we did with tears in both of our eyes, I would tell her, I'm so glad you told me. Now, let's, you know, do you mind if I hold your hand through the process? And find her a counselor and check in with her and make sure that she's doing the work. That's what I would do now, Terica Berry now.
Understood. See, before we close, we close. Why empower girls? Let's play devil's advocate. Why not teach girls to be pregnant and in the kitchen? Why empower girls? Like, why?
I think placing the power and, you know, just the word empower is basically putting power in these girls. Mm-hmm. The thought of, or the idea of empowering these girls is to say, I'm not going to tell you what to do or what success looks like or what, you know, what's right and wrong or what's good and bad. What I'm going to do is expose you to a wide array, a plethora of options and paths. I'm going to give you the confidence, help instill and develop and cultivate the confidence within you that you can do whatever it is you want to do. Even if you want to be home and pregnant, if that's what you want to do, I want you to have the power to make that choice, make that decision, and feel good about it. You know, if you want to be the CEO of a major corporation, if you want to own your own business, if you want to travel the world, if you don't want to ever have children, and you're dealing with the pressures of people saying, hey, you're 30 something years old, you ain't had no kids yet. How do we place the power in these girls so that they can feel confident with the path they've chosen, so that when they look at the end of their life, when everything is summed up and done, they can look back over their life and say, hey, I did what I needed to do. You know, I took chances, I you know, accomplished things, and ultimately I was successful.
Nice. Real quick, T, is the future bright for our girls?
Oh yeah.
Excellent.
I'm watching all the stuff. Did you watch the All-Star game last night?
No, I don't watch TV.
Yeah, I figured you did. They were really doing a lot of salutes to HBCUs, and they did a lot for women.
Oh, nice.
Black women in sports, and the first Black coach, I believe, in the NBA, female. First Black female coach in the NBA, and they're really, like, I'm seeing a lot of celebration of women, celebration of Black women going on right now. And I just think that now is a great time. It's a great time. Like today, like you said, is International Women's Day. And it's basically celebrating the fight for women's rights and just bringing all that to the forefront, everything that you know, the women before us fought for. And we're just seeing it all come to pass now. And we're able to really, if in position and exposed the right opportunities and empowered properly, then we can really take advantage of the opportunities that are being presented in front of us now.
Awesome. T, I thank you so much for your presence. So thank you so much for sharing what your knowledge is. And before we leave, we want to, you know, lighten it up because this is kind of heavy. Let's lighten it up. Yeah, this is heavy stuff. Like, if you're carrying stuff for 30 years, it's kind of heavy. Let's lighten it up. Let the viewers find out a little more about who you are. This is called the rapid fire section. Workout in the morning or workout in the evening?
Morning.
She's like, workout, what's that?
my true answer was gonna be as long as you get it in, because sometimes it'll be 6 at night. So whatever, like, just get it in.
I don't work out, Wes.
I run, Wes. You know that's my thing.
Like, workout is overrated. Coffee or tea? Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Tea? Of course, tea back in America.
Is that even a question?
Beach or pool?
What is it?
Beach or pool?
Oh, beach. Power
nap or 5-hour energy?
Power nap.
Pray
Definitely
through it.
That nap light.
Oh, you see that couch back there?
Gets it in.
Listen, I have a 9 o'clock meeting, and I can get me a 7-minute nap right now. Right now, between now and 9 o'clock, I can end and say thank you for coming and hit a 7-minute nap and be revived for my 9 o'clock. Pray through it or hustle through it?
Both.
Interesting. See, you can have both. You do the praying first, and then get the messages on what to do, and then get out there.
I'm hustling while I'm praying.
But like, God, you never did anything. I prayed. You were supposed to go hustle. What is the biggest lesson you learned from your dad, T?
If you're gonna wear the shoes, wear them. And he didn't even realize that he taught me this lesson, but it was, we were going to eat one day and I had some heels on and I took the heels off and put some flip-flops on. And he was like, why do y'all do that? If you're going to wear the shoes, wear them. So when I asked him years later, he didn't even remember saying that. But to me, what I took that as is, you know, whatever you're going to do in life, like, actually do it. You know, don't be a part-time entrepreneur. Don't be, you know, like, oh, I'm going to just kind of stick my toe in it. Like, jump in head first and, like, do it. If you're going to wear the shoes, wear them.
Go in. And one last thing. What is the essence of TRT?
Authenticity.
Boom. Nothing else after that. T, thank you so much for being here. Where can they find you? Individuals who have girls that they want to empower, how can they find you?
You can find me on my website at awomanstandard.com. Also on social media, Instagram, Facebook, everything is at awomanstandard.com. And this week is very exciting because we are actually having an IG takeover. So we have young women that are taking over our Instagram stories. So every day this week, please chime into the stories and give feedback. That it'll be really nice for them to have a lot of engagement to support what they're doing. So even today, go in. I think Mina Giddens is first. So go to our Instagram and give some hearts and love and everything for the things that they're posting.
Awesome. Tia, again, thank you so much. Listen, I wish you a great day and an even better week. All right.
Thanks, Wes.
Bye-bye.